Hey friends, Sean from Draft Therapy here, and on today's head-to-head, I'm going to compare apples to oranges. Lighthearted is a 3.7% IPA, Two Hearted is a 7% IPA, and Double Two Hearted is an 11% double IPA, all from Bell's Brewery in Comstock, Michigan. So I mentioned apples and oranges, and these are no doubt totally different beers, all with different markets, I'd assume, but I thought it would be fun to sit down with all these different variations on Bell's classic IPA, Two Hearted. Lighthearted is for those who crave the lower ABV, the crushable nature of being able to drink for a slight buzz, or maybe for someone who's watching calories or who wants to drink a lot over a long period of time. Two Hearted is more of an everyday IPA, I think. It does pack a little bit more of a punch at 7%. And then Double Two Hearted is more for maybe the beer drinker that's looking for a higher octane beer, or the more of an enthusiast that thinks, hey, I love Two Hearted. I got to try that Double Two Hearted, or at least that's how I see it. So I wanted to just get a little taste comparison going on. If you want to see more content like this, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss out. So you may know all the ABV specs on all these beers, but some of the facts about these beers you have to kind of dig a little deeper on. And that's the calorie and carb info. Now, Lighthearted is 110 calories. It's 9 carbs. I think technically like 8.7. Two Hearted is 212 calories and 17 carbs. So Double Two Hearted was probably a little bit harder to find. But based on some calorie information I was able to find, it sits probably, just on some calculations, probably about 336 calories per bottle. I don't even want to know how many carbs. Bell's wasn't as forthcoming about Double Two Hearted as it was for all this other stuff. So enough with all the facts and the data and the empirical stuff. Let's get down to the totally subjective world of beer drinking and get these into some glasses. Fun fact, I will be sleeping well tonight. So tonight, I'm going to be drinking out of a trio of Tiku glasses. I'm going to use my Witch's Hat glass for my for regular Two Hearted. I'm going to use my Draft Therapy Tiku for Lighthearted, and I'm going to use a Holmes Tiku glass for Double Two Hearted. And that's also because these are bottles. That also means I'm going to be doing a little guest star role by my handy dandy bottle opener. And one thing I wanted to point out or mention before I started was my Lighthearted video. I mentioned something about the label, and on the Lighthearted had a fish, and Two Hearted has two fish actually. What it actually is, I was thinking of Double Two Hearted. Double Two Hearted has two fish. Two Hearted has one fish. So Lighthearted has one fish. Two Hearted has one fish. Double Two Hearted two fish. If there's an easy way to figure that out, I guess that's how you do it. So I'm going to slide this over so you'll be able to get all the stuff on the overhead without all these other beers in the way. So we're going to go ahead and crack Two Hearted open. I'm going to smell it first. This one was packaged on December 19th, 2019, just about a month and a half ago from the time of this video. So let's go ahead and pour this. I'm not going to read all the label and all that stuff. We're just going to go right into drinking. And that's a nice kind of amberish yellow out of the bottle into the glass. Sorry about that. And it has a nice head forming on the top. There's a little bit of sediment. Again, this is about a month and a half old. As you can see from the glass, though, that is a nice kind of amber orangish kind of color. About 2 fingers, maybe a little bit less than 2 fingers ahead. A nice kind of off-white head, very compact bubbles, very, some larger ones on the top, but very compact, very tight bubbles. And holding it up to the light, there's a little bit of sediment in here. Actually, for being Two Hearted, it does have a little bit of a sediment. I'm going to be messing up Double Two Hearted, Two Hearted, and Lighthearted, so just bear with me on that. But it has a little bit of sediment kind of in suspension in the glass. I can't see my fingers. I can't see really much detail, and getting a nose on it. One more. I get a little bit of that kind of caramel malty characteristic in there. I get a little bit of a sweet kind of citrus smell in there as well. A little bit of a grapefruit. Oof. Just dip my nose in that foam. So we're going to move on because I'm going to crack the next one, pour it. This is Lighthearted Ale. This is the new one. This is the 3.7% ABV, 110 calorie IPA, the Two Hearted killer, so to speak. So let's go ahead and put a nose on the can here. Not getting so much of that malty characteristic, obviously, as I was out of Two Hearted. I'm getting a little bit of a citrus kind of note in there, but not much. Let's go ahead and pour it. Very much a very different color, a lot more yellow, a lot more golden. I'm going to slow down here so I don't over pour here. but a lot bigger head. The head is still pretty compact, pretty tight. On the review that I recorded, it wasn't, the bubbles weren't quite as tight as this. They're a lot looser, and I'm not really sure why that was. Could be the glass. Gonna head try and pour as much of this as I can. I'm gonna set that right here. Actually, I'm gonna move Two Hearted over a little bit more. Hopefully I keep it in the frame here. And then I'm gonna hold this up to the light. As you can see, very, very golden, a lot different colored. That's more of an amber. This is more of a golden yellow. A lot clearer, a lot cleaner looking. A lot of carbonation streaming up from the bottom. Not seeing a whole bunch of carbonation from here, but I can tell you that there is, obviously a lot of carbonation in that one too. It's a much more subdued kind of aroma than Two Hearted is. I get a little bit of a malty kind of characteristic, very slight though, and a little bit of a citrus characteristic, again, very slight. I'm going to put the can in front of the glass. I'm going to put the bottle in front of this one, and then double Two Hearted. So this is the 11% Monster. This was bottled in August. This is from August 22nd, 2019. As you can tell from all the different labels, they're a little bit different, but it is what it is. Let's go ahead and crack that one. This is going to probably lose a lot of its kind of IPA-ness at this point because it's over, it's almost 6 months. Again, this is February 1st when I'm recording this. So it's probably, 4 or 5, almost about 5.5 months or 5 months or so that this was packaged. Let's go ahead and pour this. Oh, nose out of the bottle. Almost forgot. It's gotten a lot sweeter. It does have a lot more of that kind of that citrus characteristic. I'm not getting a lot of maltiness out of it. Keep rubbing my nose on the bottle. I'm getting a little bit of a malty, but not much. I'm getting a lot more of kind of a sweet citrus aroma out of this. So let's go ahead and pour this one. And it's coming out very similar in color to regular Two Hearted. Maybe a little bit darker, a little bit clearer, a little bit more refined of a color. I'm going to get a little bit more aggressive on the end of the pour there. And the head, or the carbonation's rising up the head, filling up about 2 fingers, maybe about 1.5 fingers. But it's actually a lot darker. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to reverse the order. I'm going to do double Two Hearted, and Lighthearted so you can see. And then I'll probably work my way back up. I'll probably use Two Hearted as the kind of the one to start with and then, branch off. But yeah, holding this or smelling it first. Yeah, a little bit more of a sweeter citrus kind of aroma, a little bit of a grapefruit in there, but a little bit more of you can smell a little bit more of a maltiness in there. And holding it up to the light, it is quite a bit clearer than the Two Hearted that I just cracked, which was, only about a month old. And I can see a little bit more detail on my finger than I could with the Two Hearted. And it is, it's just a nice looking, beer. It's got a nice color to it. So let's do that kind of coloration. We'll put Lighthearted in the middle, Two Hearted. We'll put Two Hearted in the middle. Do a little 3-card Monty here with my bottle. So I'm gonna keep the bottles. This is how it looks. How the bottles are set up, or how the cans are set up, right? Or how the glasses are set up. So we've got double Two Hearted, Lighthearted. As you can see, we go from a little bit of a darker orangish amber to a little bit more of an orange at this point. This looks very orange, maybe a little bit tan or brown. So amber, orangish amber, orange, and yellow, golden yellow. And, I can I'm looking at it through the light. This looks a little bit clearer. This one looks a little bit hazier, a little bit more suspension, a little bit more kind of floating in suspension. And this one looks really clear. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start drinking Two Hearted, and Two Hearted will be like the base. I'll go Two Hearted, Lighthearted, double Two Hearted, and maybe, between the two. So let's start with Two Hearted. And if you've had a Two Hearted before, you know what I'm going to kind of explain or talk about some things that you're already familiar with, but bear with me. So up front, it's got a nice sweetness to it. It's got a nice kind of malty characteristic that bites in there on the finish, on the tail. And it has the bitterness that's in there is a little bit more of it's like a grapefruity biting kind of bitterness with a little bit of pine in there as well. Swishing it around, I'm getting a little bit more of that kind of hoppy bitterness that comes through. Yeah, a little bit more of a piney kind of bitter finish, but more of a sweet, citrusy hoppiness at the beginning. and then the end is where the malty kind of characteristic comes through, and that kind of piney bitterness as well. So let's jump into lighthearted to kind of compare. First thing I noticed right off the bat between these two, mouthfeel is totally different. Mouthfeel on Two Hearted is a little bit more of a light to medium kind of mouthfeel. It's not overly thick, but you can tell that it's a little bit of a heavier on the heavier side of light. So it's like light, medium. It's like right here. Two Lighthearted again. Sorry, is like crisp, really light, really clean, crisp mouthfeel. The taste, though, it's not so much of that malty characteristic, not so much of that sweet kind of citrus that you get. The malty kind of characteristic that I do get on this is on the really late aftertaste. And what I mean by that is when you take a drink of it, if you kind of like you don't follow up with another taste right away, if you let it sit in your mouth, like all the remaining flavor just stays on your tongue, and maybe a few minutes later, that's when this kind of maltiness comes through, and that's where a lot of the piney kind of bitterness, really the hoppiness, real hop flavor or hop characteristics, I guess, really come through on the aftertaste when you just kind of you're not drinking anything, you just kind of let it sit. But it's a really crisp, clean flavor. They are very comparable. If I do a Two Hearted, 7%, 212 calories, I'm getting that kind of sweet flavor, and then I go to a Lighthearted. They are somewhat similar. Now, it's not. A friend and I were talking about this earlier, and he had this, and he was kind of telling me about it, and he was like, "Oh, it tastes like a watered down Two Hearted." It kind of does, but it doesn't at the same time. It is a lot. It has a lot more flavor than a lot of kind of light IPAs or low calorie IPAs that I've had before. So, but it is very comparable. Like it does taste like the very light version of Two Hearted, not only in the mouthfeel but also in the flavor. It doesn't have quite as much flavor as Two Hearted, but it's not lacking in flavor by any means. So I'm gonna jump from the lighthearted to the double Two Hearted. That's just night and day different. Whereas the lighthearted was a crisp, light, um, really just clean flavor. Double Two Hearted, it's still clean, but it is not light by any means. It feels a lot more syrupy. It feels a lot heavier. It feels like more of, where I said that Two Hearted was like, here's the light mouthfeel, here's the medium mouthfeel, and this is where Two Hearted is. This is the medium, and this is the heavy, and Two Hearted's here on the medium, and then you take the medium over, and the double Two Hearted is like it's like three steps thicker. So let's compare double Two Hearted to Two Hearted, but the flavor that I'm getting out of this is really big, a lot, really bold flavor. A lot more of that sweetness comes through. It's settled down after I said like 5 months, but it's still very drinkable. Not a problem drinking this at all. So let's do a double Two Hearted and a Two Hearted. A lot more of that maltiness comes through. A lot more of this kind of almost perfumish kind of flavor comes through, and then Two Hearted. It's funny because when you try a double Two Hearted, when you try a Two Hearted and a lighthearted, the lighthearted tastes like a watered down version of Two Hearted. When you try a double Two Hearted and a Two Hearted starts tasting like a watered down version of double Two Hearted. I can totally see the relationship here. You can tell that this is along the same kind of family, the same kind of IPA family. Man, that is still just a really good beer. And then or I'm sorry, Two Hearted. I almost just called it IPA, the beer. Yeah, I mean, you get so much more of that citrus sweetness on the double Two Hearted. Again, I'm not a huge double Two Hearted guy. I like Two Hearted, and I think amongst this comparison, I'm still going to probably rank Two Hearted. It's going to be my favorite. This is one I'm still going to go to, but I can see different situations for the different kinds of beer. If you can still find double Two Hearted, if you know somebody has a double Two Hearted and you're a huge Two Hearted fan, and they say, hey, come on over, let's share a double Two Hearted, or I have a couple of them, let's try them out. Yeah, don't pass it up. It's still a really good beer, but if I had to pick from the three, I think I would still go Two Hearted first. I might go Lighthearted next and then double Two Hearted last. And that's, these are still awesome beers between the three of them. You can't go wrong with any of them. But I think Two Hearted would be more of my kind of everyday drinking beer. Lighthearted would be one where I want to have a couple beers where I have kind of a taste for beer, but I don't want to get too much into the 7% with a Two Hearted. And double Two Hearted is one of those beers where it's more of like sharing with your buddies, more of a sipper, more of something that I want to maybe just have one beer. If I had two beers, I'd probably go a double Two Hearted and then a Two Hearted. So I don't think you can go wrong with any of these, but just wanted to kind of give you a comparison of what each of these is like. Again, Two Hearted's that really just standard, just standby IPA, super consistent, always great, always the same kind of beer. Has a lot of that malty characteristic, a lot of sweetness, citrus sweetness, citrus hoppiness following that, and piney hoppiness on the aftertaste on the finish. Lighthearted is a little bit less of that malty characteristic, less of that citrus characteristic, less of that piney characteristic, but the aftertaste is really where Lighthearted shines. I feel like that's where that kind of piney hoppiness, that piney bitterness really pulls through. And then double Two Hearted is more of that heavier mouthfeel, thicker IPA, a lot more sweetness, but almost too much for me, for my kind of taste. It's almost a little bit too much sweetness, but you get a lot of that malty characteristic, a lot of that citrus sweetness, and then that piney kind of hoppiness, that piney bitterness just follows up in the end. If I had to pick one though out of the three, I would all day, every day go with Two Hearted, then Lighthearted, then double Two Hearted. All right, friends, that has been Lighthearted, Two Hearted, and double Two Hearted, all from Bell's Brewery in Comstock, Michigan. Have you done a side-by-side, or maybe I guess you'd call this a vertical tasting like this on your own? What was your findings? Do you have a preference on any of these beers? Can you see when certain beers would come through in certain situations? Let me know in the comments down below. While you're down there, if you like beer, I'm here releasing reviews and content like this twice a week, all for free for viewers just like you, and you might miss your newest favorite if you're not subscribed and getting those notifications. So until next time, I'm Sean from Draft Therapy. Thanks for stopping by, and remember to drink craft beer, support your local breweries wherever they are, and most importantly, when we hear the voices sing, the book of love will open up and let us in. Thanks for watching. Cheers.